Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. My name is Roger Patterson. I'm on the hunt for Bigfoot. Here in my hand is the newly released book, Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist? In this book, I've cataloged convincing Sasquatch sightings over the years from a variety of different people and backgrounds. Now, just 3 months ago, there was talk of Bigfoot sightings in the Bluff Creek region in Northern California. And 10 days ago, in late October, longtime friend of mine, Bob Gimlin, and I, we ventured out into the Pacific Northwest to see what we can find. We took this very camera along with us as we traveled on horseback through the rugged terrain, and against all odds, we captured on film for the first time an elusive creature known as Sasquatch. And our film will hopefully put an end to all the speculation and prove once and for all that Bigfoot does in fact exist in this world that we live. So without any further ado, here's the following footage of Bob and myself that we captured on October 20th, 1967 on the east bank of Bluff Creek, California. This is the Bigfoot. This is an 8-panel cotton blend, black, brown, and tan patchwork cap. In Boston Scally's own words, this lightweight 8-panel design features a patchwork of black, brown, and tan in a mix of classic plaid and solid panels. Crafted from a cotton blend, the very textures and patterns give the cap a worn-in, outdoors-inspired feel that's as mysterious as the legend itself. Here is the cap in hand. This is the Bigfoot by the Boston Scally Company. And this hat, if I recall, was actually hinted at sometime last year. This cap was in the making. I think we weren't for sure that this was coming out, but it is part of the mythical creatures caps. And so it was at least hinted at, I think, by Boston Scally at one point that this cap was indeed coming out. So it is here. This is the Bigfoot. This is the most recent release by the Boston Scally Company. I hadn't actually bought a Boston Scally. I'm trying to limit myself a little bit these days. For one thing, I'm running out of room for caps, and it just gets really expensive if you just, start snatching the caps up. So I had to give myself a little bit of a breather here. I'm trying to only buy maybe one cap a month, unless I just, fall in love with a cap and I have to have it. But thankfully, this fell on right about the time where the month came back around and the new month, and I was like, I got to get that. I've got to get the Bigfoot. So as you can tell by my my intro there, I'm a little bit more have a little bit more than a passing interest in Bigfoot, you could say. I know what people think when they think of Bigfoot, especially the, because the best evidence for Bigfoot is probably the first video that was ever shot in 1967, and it was by Roger Patterson, and along with him was his friend Bob Gimlin. And so I won't make this a Bigfoot enthusiast video throughout. I will try to focus on the cap. But the camera you do see here that I used for that video, the intro, that is the exact model that they used, that Roger Patterson used for the Bigfoot video where he caught the creature or the man in the suit, whatever you think it may be, the hoax. And then behind me, that of course, that's the famous Bigfoot where he's turning around looking at the camera. And that is actually signed by Bob Gimlin, who was with Roger Patterson that day. It's been authenticated, so really cool. I didn't get to meet Bob Gimlin or anything like that, but just a really cool piece there, memorabilia, and as well, can you say, yeah, there's the book. The book back there, and Roger Patterson actually wrote that book, and it really is a compilation of Bigfoot sightings over the years, and he did interview people, and so really cool, and that was released a couple of years before they captured the footage in Bluff Creek, California. And I know what everybody's thinking. Well, he was so interested in Bigfoot, of course he's going to hoax it, right? And so, like I said, I'll try not to get into all that. But let's look at this hat. This cap, the colors on this cap, Boston Scally essentially said they tried to make the cap look like what you would expect, Bigfoot, what it reminds you of. And we do have the browns here, the pattern, the plaid here, and then the dark browns. That is a very dark brown, almost approaching black there. And now what is so crazy, again, one of Boston Scally's biggest flaws, I think, is their marketing. Not in the way that they reveal the caps, I think, week to week, because I think that's cool. They give you a little bit of a taste on Sunday, and then the full reveal by Thursday usually is what they do. But the problem that they have is that their colors on the pictures they're taking, on the videos they're showing, is oftentimes not representative of these caps at all. This portion here, when you look at the video that they released, it looked white. It looked completely white, but this is not. This is just an off tan. I mean, this is a tan more than anything. So you just don't know sometimes what these caps are going to look like. So you can see it there. So let me go ahead and talk about it. The Bigfoot pin, which has become a little controversial now, but there you can see the pin. It's actually a pretty neat pin. He is wearing the cap. And I was, talking, I think on one of Chad's videos, we were going back and forth. He had released a different cat video, not the Bigfoot. And we were talking about, I told him I was, of course, getting the Bigfoot. I was really excited about it. And everyone people had been pointing this out, that Bigfoot on this pin has 2 left feet. He does. He absolutely does. And this is making people think, are these pins now being created by AI? What's going on? I am just personally not a big fan of AI at all, especially when it comes to being creative. And I get a lot of people use AI, and if you do, that's fine. Use it. It makes things way easier. It definitely does that. But for me, that's just part of the fun of making these videos is, it allows me to be creative. It allows me to create my own thumbnails and, my own intros. So I think that's a lot of fun. And, if I wasn't doing that part of it, I wouldn't enjoy doing these cap reviews nearly as much. But if it's coming to these pins that they're making, maybe they aren't using AI, but that's a pretty big oversight. Those 2 big left feet they have there on the pin. It's so tiny, though. This is actually a pretty small pin, so I don't think a ton of people are even going to notice that. That's not going to stick out to them. So, it is what it is. If they are using AI, I do hope they don't do it in the future, because you might end up with little goofs like this on the pins. And the pin actually just looks a little bit different, too. The enamel or whatever it's made out of. It looks just the material looks different. So I don't know what they're doing, if they're doing something different. But in any event, hey, that's what it is on this one. So going forward, whether they are using AI or not, I just don't know. But it is something definitely to address. And I don't think I've ever said this in these videos before. And I probably should have mentioned this a long time ago. So I'm going to go ahead and just say it now. But when I'm rating these caps, I'm not just rating the cap. I'm rating pretty much everything that comes along with it, because 9 times out of 10, I'm also purchasing the pin, if nothing else, definitely the pin, but also usually the apparel as well. So I kind of think of these as a package deal a lot of the times. And a lot of the times they will release maybe 2 or 3 shirts or something with a cap. I'm probably not going to get them all. I'm going to get the one that I like the most. But I tend to rate these when I do give a rating as a whole package, not just necessarily the cap by itself. So I just wanted to clarify that because I don't think I've ever said that before. But speaking of apparel, they did release this. And this is the Bigfoot shirt, and it's got the pocket here. You've got the Bigfoot. Here you see on the back the image there. Really cool image. And speaking of the image, we do have, of course, on the interior as well, Bigfoot stomping his way here through the what appears to be the Pacific Northwest, the Bigfoot capital of the country, undoubtedly. So really, really cool interior. And of course, we do have the dust bag was included as well. Same image there. I like this dust bag a lot. With that color there, it's really weird. It's a very bizarre yellow they chose. So it almost looks like maybe dawn or dusk. I'm not sure exactly what they were going for, but it does look really neat. I like the color there. So a really cool choice there. And this brim, it looks almost identical to the black here that it is surrounding. I like when brims, stick out just a little bit more. But, in any event, and if I have one more criticism about the cap itself, it'd probably be the button. I wish the button was a brown, like one of these colors, like a lighter brown, or even the tan. I think that would look really neat on this cap because it just kind of blends in, with the black, gets lost a little bit. Not that most people are looking at the top of your head too much, but I think it would have been cool to just do it a little bit different of a color. And it is neat, though. I do have the other caps. I should have brought them for this video, so I apologize. But if you do look at the Loch Ness and the Kraken, they are the two other caps that are currently in the Mythical Creatures lineup. And so you do have the same type of patterns. On those caps, you usually have a solid and then, this sort of plaid patchwork as well as this. So they are keeping them, they look like they do fit together in that world, in that little bit of a cap universe that they've created with the Mythical Creatures. So I think it's really neat that they did that. And again, I'm just such a huge fan of Bigfoot that I had to get this. What's really interesting, and I didn't know this until me and my wife went to a Bigfoot museum that is only about an hour or so away from us. And you see the picture there when I was there. We had a really fun time there. But we learned about this story that only took place like literally 10 minutes down the road from where we live. And it was a big enough Bigfoot story from 1985, I believe, that they actually put it in the museum. It was a helicopter crash, and they said during the night, they had rangers there waiting for the people to come the next morning. So they were sitting there at the wreckage, and apparently these creatures came, and they didn't attack anyone, but they were a bit of a menace. I had no idea about this account. So it was really cool to learn that there, and then to learn this was only 10 minutes away from where I live. So a really cool story that we learned there at the museum. It was a little roadside museum off in the mountains. So really neat. A really neat tourist attraction. And like I said, I don't believe all Bigfoot stories are real. In fact, I think probably most of them are fake. But what's so interesting about this account, where's somebody here, about that account, the Patterson Gimlin film, is that it was so early, and this is in the broad daylight where this was taken. In most, Bigfoot videos, it's blurry. You have, the creature, whatever it may be, the man in the suit, it's being, the body's being obstructed by branches, leaves, who knows what. But this is in the broad daylight, and you can see this creature perfectly. And through the technology of today, they've restored this video. They've even stabilized it. So if you just search Patterson Gimlin film, you'll find it immediately. And it's so crazy because you would think with the technology of the time, that we have now, looking at it, it would look worse, right? You would be able to say this is completely fake. And that's how I went into this whole Bigfoot thing when I was starting to get into Bigfoot. I was like, this is a man in a suit. This isn't real. But when I looked at that video and looked at the restoration that people have done and the stabilization, the more you look at it, you're like, maybe this is not a man in a suit. And like I said, I think most are, but I'm not so sure the original Patterson-Gimlin film is. I lean on the side that this actually was some sort of real creature. We could make a 4-hour video on Bigfoot, but we're looking at the cap. So that one, I think, you can see the musculature and the calf and the legs. It's so crazy. So just, if you've never really taken the time to look at it, really do. Give it a look again because, like most people, you'll probably go in thinking this is a man in a suit. That's how I went in looking at this video. But I don't know. It's just interesting. It's definitely interesting. And I'm in kind of a bluegrass country where I live in the South, so it's kind of neat. It's something neat to kind of be into. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to rate this cap. I was really looking forward to it. And like I said, I'm rating this as a package deal with the apparel and with the pin. And there's just no getting around it. Those two big left feet are just a flaw. It's an error. That should never have happened. As much as I like the cap itself, and like I said, the colors on this, it really does remind me of Bigfoot, right? You have those dark browns and the light browns, some people were joking and saying maybe it should have been a furry cap, like what we were expecting. There's really only so much you can do, I think, sometimes with a cap like this. And the Loch Ness was kind of similar, right? You had the murky looking green water, the blues, the greens, and all that. So you can't just make, like a Loch Ness cap, in a way, right? Boston Scally just isn't going to do that. But with that said, I just don't think you can overlook that pin. It's a big mistake on Boston Scally's part. And again, this all sold out really quickly. I know Boston Scally has been putting work into limiting purchases. You can only buy 3 of certain caps, 2 of certain pins, something like that. They've been actually trying to get the scalpers under control a little bit, but this shirt, it sold out, I know, within 10 minutes. It was gone. And then the pin was gone in almost, I believe, the same amount of time. And it took a little bit longer, but the cap did stay in stock for maybe a day or so, if that long. But it was all gone relatively quickly. But I like this cap a lot, actually. I think it's a nice looking cap. And if you didn't have the pin on it, you probably wouldn't even know that it's a Bigfoot cap, right? It just looks kind of like... It's a very muted cap. I almost wish that instead of maybe this black back here, maybe if they would have done some sort of green or something, like the forest, to remind us a little bit of the Pacific Northwest, the trees and the forest where Bigfoot tend to be if they are real. So I think that would have been cool because this cap already is so muted anyways. I don't think it really needed black. So I'm going to go ahead and rate this. And I do rate on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Again, I'm going in with the apparel. I'm going in with the cap itself and the pin. And this cap for me, it just barely gets a 4. This whole Bigfoot Boston Scally release. And I almost gave this a 3. Not because I don't like everything, I do, but that pin is unacceptable. It is completely unacceptable, and that is such a big quality control issue, and that's the last thing that Boston Scally needs is one more quality control issue, because we already have that with the sizing, we already have that with the seams not being straight sometimes, so this is just another thing in the pot that they don't need. It's a bit of a bummer, but like I said, this pin's so tiny anyways, I just don't think, unless you just, get right up to someone's head, and look at it, you're not going to notice this. But it is still there. It is still how this pin was made. It's a gigantic oversight. It should have never happened. This should have been something that was caught very quickly, and it's unfortunate that it wasn't. But I'm still very pleased with all this. I love this shirt. I do still really like the pin, despite the 2 big left feet. And the cap is just, it's a really pretty cap, regardless if it's, Bigfoot themed or not. But when you do put the pin on it, it's Bigfoot. It's a Bigfoot cap. So really cool. And before I go, I have to thank my wife so much for helping me with the intro because there was some outtakes. Actually, I don't think I've ever had any outtakes in my intros, but I was so excited about this cap coming in that I actually did the intro days before this cap did arrive today. And so she was actually the first one who got in the creature costume, and I was trying to film through the camera and through the old camera, trying to get a shot of her in the costume there. And it was just not working. And it was so incredibly hot where we are. It has been stifling hot. It was in the high 90s with humidity here. It was awful, so thank you so much. I'm so sorry we didn't use that footage. It ended up being me that you saw there in the intro. And we were, of course, replicating, the famous shot from the Patterson-Gimlin film. So in any event, tell me what y'all think of this cap, because I was so excited when this came out. Tell me, do you think Bigfoot, you think it's real? You think it was real? I tend to think maybe if it was, it's not anymore. But maybe it is. Maybe, in the national, the preserves and everything and the reservations that we have, that people don't normally go into. Maybe they're there. Maybe that's why we don't see them, right? People say, well, Roger Patterson, he was out there looking for one. Of course he would hoax it. Well, if I'm looking for a giraffe, I don't go out in the hills of Tennessee trying to find one, right? With the exception of a zoo, I go to Africa. I go where they're located. So, whatever. But let me know what you think about this cap too, and how it compares to the other mythological creatures. And like I said, I'm just such a gigantic fan of Bigfoot that this one's my favorite. I wear the Kraken a lot, actually. I probably actually wear the Kraken more than the Loch Ness. I don't know why. I just tend to. But this one is definitely my favorite out of the three. So, again, it's a score 4 out of 5. And thank y'all so much for joining me today. And I hope y'all have a great rest of your day.